author of 3 self-published books available on Amazon and Kindle. First one is Heart of a Warrior, World War II era Pacific War theater. The second one is Fighting Poles, World War II European theater. This also includes many of the stories of his father who served in the war. And the third one is Quentin, a Western. So, hi, Paul.
A different kind of Western.
A different kind of Western.
A very different kind of Western.
So, tell me a little bit about your books.
Well, you start with Quentin, since that was the last one you talked about. I talked about it being a different kind of Western. I was looking to do something in the Western genre that was not your typical hero who knew everything and seemed to have a golden tongue as well as a golden gun that just couldn't be beat. I tried to place an average family guy in some of the scenarios you might be familiar with in the Western genre. The bad guys rob the bank and take off out of town. He's the only one that wants to go chase them. But in chasing them, he doesn't know where they're going and has to actually stop at every crossroads and see if they went that way. Check on every ranch he passes. And throughout the entire book, it's always a struggle of trying to make the right decision, and some he makes right and some he doesn't. So it's kind of a different kind of a Western hero. It's trying to, again, put a common man in an uncommon situation.
Yeah, I read it, and I felt like the hero was kind of a reluctant hero. He just wanted to, was from Civil War, just wanted to settle down and live out his life, and things just kept popping up that just kept bringing him back into action.
Exactly. It was one of those that he wasn't out there looking for trouble. He wasn't out there trying to be the world's best lawman. He was just taken over by circumstance.
Yep.
And he had a wife who kept him on the straight and level.
Yes, she did.
As so many of our wives do.
And the second one, Fighting Poles.
Fighting Poles, when I was a little boy, the only time my father would talk about his experience in the Army during World War II was when he was with other combat veterans. They'd have a few beers and they'd start swapping stories. I was kind of like a fly on the wall. I was fascinated by the experiences, again, of a common man put in a very uncommon situation. I didn't find out later that he had befriended a Polish boy who had been taken from his family in Poland and brought to Germany to be part of the Germanification process and turned into a German. Dad was the only one who could speak to him in his native language. They became very close, and Dad wanted to bring him home and adopt him. There is a lot of history in Fighting Poles. I try and make sure that the history is absolutely correct. When there are historical figures in there, being Patton or Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the things they did, the agreements they made and then broke. This book will take you through things that happened in Poland from the invasion in '39 through the Polish resistance, which was the largest resistance movement in Europe, then through both the 1942 ghetto uprising, when the Jewish population learned that they were being taken to death camps, not to resettlement camps, and resisted the movement, and then the 1944 uprising in Warsaw, while the Russians sat across the river and just waited for the Germans to wipe out the resistance so they wouldn't have to put up with a bunch of Polacks who thought they wanted to be free.
Yep. I noticed we brought a couple of guns here that kind of make an appearance in Fighting Poles.
Yeah, as a matter of fact,
your dad brought home.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Dad was sent out on patrol, told to bring back prisoners, and when he was told to bring back prisoners, he had relieved a.
These have all been checked and cleared, by the way.
They had. He had liberated this P-38. This was the standard German pistol during World War II, and was the most common one you would find. It replaced the P-08 Luger, and was pretty common. Well, he had taken that from one of the prisoners he brought in. The lieutenant who had sent him out told him that since he had sent the patrol out, he felt that he should have that gun. Dad disagreed, and the lieutenant told him that, well, he would keep sending him on patrol until he either got the gun or he took it off his body. So Dad decided that being practical, he just gave the gun to the lieutenant. Years later, after I had done a couple of magazine articles, I got a call from a man who said that he had my father's gun. It had been his father's, and he didn't shoot, and he thought I should have it back. So he sold it to me, and I have the gun my father liberated but never got to use. Subsequently, as they were going through towns, Dad decided that he still wanted a handgun when they were clearing villages and towns, so they would go into a town and they would find the mayor, and they had a very clever way of finding the mayor, but I'm going to save that for you to read in the book. Quite amusing. But they would find the mayor and tell the mayor to have all the citizens turn whatever guns they had into the square, that anyone they saw after 2 hours with a gun, they would shoot first and ask questions later. So the guns would show up, and Dad found what he thought was the ugliest gun he had ever seen in his life. This was a 1907 Dreiss that had been used as a substitute standard basically by the police and reserve units during World War I. It is one of the guns that was produced very early in the semi-automatic period, and is got lines that are not beautiful. And he decided that this would be the gun he would use simply because no self-respecting officer would be caught dead with it. And he was right. He carried it the rest of the war, and no officer ever tried to take it away from him. So he brought that one home, and
that one actually saw action in World War II.
Yes, and he brought that home, and of course I was a little tight-lipped shortly. I was born in '47, a couple of years after he got back. My mom didn't want guns around the house, being a good Chicagoan. She thought only criminals and soldiers had guns, and maybe a cop or two. So he gave it to my uncle, and my uncle gave it to me just before he died. He called me in one day and said, "I've got something that really belongs to you. Your father meant you to have it." And so he gave it to me, and that's where I started getting some of the history of that particular pistol.
Nice, nice. And then we've got Heart of a Warrior.
Heart of a Warrior.
Now, this one's a little bit more fiction.
This one is pretty much total fiction. I mean, the others are well, they're historical. They're all historical fiction. Fighting Poles was based on my father's actual experiences. The other two are true fiction. But I try my very best to make sure that the history is right. I do a lot of research into what it was happening. Heart of a Warrior is an interesting story, I think. Of course, I'm the one who made it up, so I think it's really interesting. But I think the reader will find it interesting also, because in Heart of a Warrior, we start again with a very common guy, a very headstrong young man who is sure that he can be a naval pilot, and there will never be another like him, that he's going to set the world on fire. He is very quickly set straight that he has everything he needs to be a naval aviator except brains, and he objects to that, and the recruiter looks at him and says, "Okay, if you think you're so smart, let's say you take off from an aircraft carrier, and the aircraft carrier is cruising at 20 knots due west, and you fly south for 2 hours. And let's give you hope that there's no crosswind, no drift to angle to figure. Now you've got another 2-hour flight back to the carrier, at which time you're going to arrive there pretty much out of gas. What course would you fly?" Now keep in mind that the carrier has been moving at 20 knots for 2 hours. Yeah. So retracing the opposite course of the one you've came down on is going to get you to where the carrier was 4 hours ago. What direction would you fly? What compass degree would you fly to intercept the carrier? And of course, he has had no training in mathematics and has no idea what the correct course would be. So they send him out to get some more training. Subsequently, he does go into combat. He gets hurt in a dogfight and is transferred to a secret project. Basically, in World War II, every belligerent on both sides had a miniature submarine program. Everyone, that is, except the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The United States did not have a miniature submarine program. It does in this book.
Yes. A little bit take like a Clive Cussler type of a.
Yes, kind of on that kind of takeoff.
Technology, a few years.
Well,
ahead.
yeah, I do advance technology a few years because the original, the original nuclear reaction took place under Stagg Field in Chicago. The Navy at the time took the information and took it to Philadelphia Naval Yard, and they were working on producing heat through the reaction, the nuclear reaction, to produce steam to drive ships by steam turbines. And of course, with World War II, they all got pulled off of that project and put onto the Manhattan Project to develop the atomic bomb. In Heart of a Warrior, it presupposes that they left a group of scientists working on the propulsion project, and in 1945, just before the end of World War II, the United States has one nuclear submarine. It's advancing history by 25 years because the first nuclear submarine, the USS Nautilus, first sailed in 1959. So I've got them having a nuclear submarine in 1945.
Yes.
So we don't go way crazy into the future, but we do look at what a nuclear submarine would have meant to the United States Navy at that time with the Japanese as a belligerent.
Yeah, it's very action-packed, very enjoyable read.
And it was amazing how much I thought I knew about submarines until I started writing it. And then I started realizing that there is so much more to know. For example, a Gato-class World War II submarine, how many torpedoes does it hold? Where does it store them? And when you get a new officer on board who had just come out of school, submarine school, what did they have him do? I mean, let's face it, he doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
So they have to put him to work doing something. So what's his first assignment normally? Well, again, you have to do a lot of research to come up and put together a story that the history is correct. And I try very hard to do that. I'm sure somebody out there is going to find a problem someplace. But boy, I've done my best to make sure that the history and the technical details are correct.
Sure.
So that's the 3 books I have on available at the moment.
Yep. You can get them in print on Amazon, or you can get them on Kindle and on Amazon. When did you have the desire to write?
I've always had the desire to write. The problem was getting anyone to support that desire. Frankly, in high school and even before high school, in grade school, I loved to tell stories. I loved to write stories. But the problem was I couldn't spell and I couldn't punctuate. Until the advent of the personal computer and spell check and grammar check, I wasn't going anywhere as a writer.
Yeah.
I could tell the story, but nothing was correct. The other thing, of course, is the hardest thing for a writer just starting out is, first of all, getting good feedback. You give your family and your friends a manuscript to read, and they don't want to hurt your feelings. So what they do is they read it and say, it's pretty good, I enjoyed it. That really doesn't help you.
Yeah.
That really,
not very encouraging.
Well, it's not that it's not encouraging, it's just they're doing their best to be encouraging.
Yes.
The problem is that's not what you need to know. You don't need to know that they liked the book. You need to know the details or the parts that were boring, the parts that were too slow, things that you did that were, if they know, things that you did that were wrong, so you can correct them. That's the feedback you need. You need good criticism, not, boy, I enjoyed the book, it was a pretty good story. That really doesn't help you at all.
Did you got anything else in the works?
Yeah, I've got several in the works in different stages, and I don't know which ones will be finished and which ones won't. I want to do a mystery. The problem with mysteries is I always try and do things that are different. I don't want to redo things that have been done a dozen times. That's why a different kind of Western, a different kind of Western hero. I don't want to just follow the same kind of path that other people have blazed. So I'm always trying to look for a different way of doing things. And I did start a manuscript on a mystery, but mysteries are very hard. I mean, they have been done to death. And coming up with an idea that has not been covered in a mystery, you know, having the butler do it isn't a cliche without reason. So coming up with a scenario that is different than has been covered 100 times is very difficult. So I don't know what that one will ever come to you know, if I'll ever get a mystery done. I do have a book in the works on my grandfather's experiences in World War I that will somewhat be modeled after Fighting Poles, yeah, because it's, again, in a war setting, and I have a character whom I have actual history on. So that's going to make it a lot easier to be able to take him and put him in situations that he was actually in and have things happen to him that actually happened to him. The one I'm more excited about, I started a book that was supposed to be on piracy. And of course, with Pirates of the Caribbean and everything else having been such a huge hit, it seemed like a good idea to write a pirate story. So many times when I start these things, they take on a life of their own, and this is no different. He starts out as a pirate and is as nasty, rotten, and no good as any pirate ever was. And part of the reason I started this was I wanted to show pirates and piracy for what they were. It's all been romanticized so much, and basically pirates were outcasts. They were there because they couldn't live in regular society of the time. They were sexual deviants. They were homosexuals. And those were not lifestyles that were accepted in the 1700s.
No.
So he gets involved with pirates, and it's a dirty, rotten, no good business. But we do bring him back, and he rehabilitates himself into a different kind of character, and we take him into the American Revolution. And once again, he's supporting the Patriots because they're against the British, and the British were the ones who had him as an indentured servant, and he hates them. So he had another chance to fight the British, so he joined the American Revolution. That's not finished. It's about 2/3 done. But I think what we're going to have is by the end, he's going to have been turned from somebody who was very much outside of society, to somebody who is a credit to society, I hope.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul. Check out these books on Amazon. It's Heart of a Warrior, Fighting Poles, and Quentin, all by Paul Mazan. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.